What's going on, guys? I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com. And what's the one thing that a lot of people don't do well? Well, it's merging. When you merge on the interstate, you see all those people that are going way too slow, having trouble getting over. But there's a phone called the Merge that is an awesome Android phone. That was a really bad transition, but you get my point. HTC Merge with US Cellular. It's a new phone. It was coming to Verizon, or we thought it was coming to Verizon, and all of a sudden it popped up on some of the regional carriers like Alltel, US Cellular. Yes, Alltel is still around, but Alltel and US Cellular, and it's here. And it offers a full QWERTY keyboard for those that send a lot of text messages. Now, is this the phone to get? Should you go with the HTC Desire or even the Samsung Mesmerize on US Cellular? We'll find out in the full review of the HTC Merge, which starts right now. If you believe in miracles, well, here's a prime miracle right here. The HTC Merge, I mean, we've heard rumor after rumor after rumor about this device. It was coming to Verizon, then it wasn't coming to Verizon, then it was coming to Verizon again, then it was coming to Verizon through indirect channels. All of these different rumors, but really, it's landed on a couple of the regional carriers, one being US Cellular. This is a US Cellular version, and it's available now, and you know, specs-wise, it's, I wouldn't say behind, well, yeah, I would, actually. It's a little bit behind even some of the mid-range Android devices out there. It's one of those ones where I think they planned it, you know, several months before it actually launched, and by the time it came out, it was kind of obsolete with dual-core processors, things like that coming out. But just to recap some of the specs, it's got a Qualcomm Snapdragon single-core 800 megahertz processor, 3.8-inch display with 480 by 800 pixels. It has a pretty decent-sized battery, 1400 milliamp hour battery. I wish HTC would make some, excuse me, bigger batteries, but 1400 in there. And it has a 5 megapixel camera on the back with a flash and autofocus. It's also capable of shooting video at 720p. So it's running Android 2.2 and it's running HTC Sense over top of it. And of course it has that physical 4-row QWERTY keyboard. Now the version of HTC Sense on this one is HTC Sense version 1.5. So you're not seeing any of those personalization options that you may be familiar with on the Evo 3D, for example, the Sensation 4G, the Thunderbolt, any device that's running Sense 2.0 or later, the Droid Incredible 2, for example, devices like that. You'll notice that instead of that little personalization button like you would see on something like the Droid Incredible 2 down here at the bottom, you only get the plus sign. So you don't get the ability to change the docks around, and this isn't a dogfight, but to change the docks around like you see at the bottom. It's that stock HTC dock, and that's all you get in Sense 1.5. But still, it's a nice addition to US Cellular's Android lineup. Like I said, it's available now, and it comes up against other devices in their lineup like the Desire, the Mesmerize, the Samsung Acclaim, a couple of other ones, but it's nice that it has that full QWERTY keyboard. Now, before I go too far, thanks to our friends at US Cellular because they hooked us up with a review unit, but also special shout out to Best Buy because they hook us up with a lot of these phones, and we give them to you in the One Paw Bandit game, and I mean, we give you some seriously cool phones. I mean, Thunderbolts, Revolutions, all kinds of high-end cool phones. When you go to Best Buy Mobile to buy a smartphone, you don't deal with mail-in rebates. You walk out the door paying the after-rebate price. You don't have to mess with paperwork. I like that. I actually buy all my phones at Best Buy Mobile in all honesty, so I'd highly recommend the same from you. But anyway, HTC Merge, here it is, Android 2.2. So it's a good-looking device, and you can see that out of the box, there's not a whole lot of non-US Cellular, or rather US Cellular installed programs on the device. You can see, scroll through here, Adobe Reader, pre-installed, City ID pre-installed, My Contacts Backup, which is US Cellular program. Let's go down through here and see Wi-Fi Hotspot, which is obviously built into the device. Your Navigator Deluxe, that's their version of Telenav. And then you can see Tone Room Deluxe up there. So all in all, the device is pretty speedy despite having that 800 megahertz processor. I mean, think G2X here. It is it's a next generation Snapdragon, so it's pretty decently fast. And let me pull this out here so you can see what it looks like from an angle, so you can see it in landscape mode as well. But overall, you know, it's faster, a reasonably fast device. The device looks good, so this is a good device for those people that travel pretty regularly and need the physical QWERTY keyboard for emails, things like that. And also, a big perk of this device, the SIM card slot as well. This is a device capable of global roaming, so you get that SIM card slot in the back. And I don't really know why I pulled the battery off. Do you know how long it took me to figure out how to remove this battery door? Because I thought this metal part came off. Oh no, it turns out it comes off at the bottom, so I'm not very good when it comes to battery doors. But all in all, the device looks good. You can see nice metal accents over here on the faceplate. This is metal, and you can feel it. It feels good. And then the battery door as well. So when you're gripping this phone, there's a 90% chance you're going to be, that's not scientific 90%, but 90% chance you're gripping a portion of the metal, be it, you know, your fingers on the back or your thumb on the front. Nice metal down here as well with a red capacitive search button. Then you have home menu and back up here as well. Red earpiece rather. Gives it a nice accent. And then on the left side, you have your volume rocker up there, micro USB charging port at the bottom, 3.5mm headphone jack, power button, and then over here, absolutely nothing. So 4-row QWERTY keyboard, let's talk about that really briefly, and then we'll go into messaging, kind of test out, see how it performs. It's a full 4-row QWERTY keyboard, no dedicated row for numbers, but you do get that typical QWERTY layout like you're familiar with on a keyboard. I mean, the keys are angled nicely. They're not, all slanted to the left or slanted to the right like Nokia tends to do with their keyboards. Makes it pretty easy to type on. Now that said, obviously with a device comes different builds, or build quality rather, depending on which model you have. So this one could have come off the product line with stiff keys. The next one could have come off the product line with soft keys. I mean, that's just unfortunate. That's the nature of mass production. So that said, the keys have been pretty hard on this device to type with, and I'll go into new messaging, or new message rather, so you can see what it's like to text on this. And we'll say the quick brown fox wants some peanuts. That does sound pretty good. Some peanuts. Whoops. N-U-T-S. Quick brown fox wants some peanuts. It's a little harder to type on. The keys are well rounded. They fit well in my thumb. They're just the perfect size. Comes with a D-pad as well, so if you're gaming or scrolling up and down rapidly, you can use that. So all in all, it's a nice keyboard. That said, the keys are a little harder than I would like them to be. They're not as tactile as they could be, but then again, that could be this particular demo model and not representative of the entire line of the HTC Merge. Now you have the HTC keyboard on here as well, and that's the only keyboard you get out of the box, HTC Touch Input Keyboard. Now the interesting thing, I worked with the Touch Input Keyboard on a ton of HTC devices, from the Evo 3D to the Sensation to the Incredible 2 to you name it. I mean, over the Evo 4G, all these devices over the past couple years, and I've never had a problem with lag on any of the HTC keyboards. I do see a problem with this one. So when I type the quick brown fox, it seems to be moving pretty quickly right now, is ready to go home. You can see every now and again it'll skip a particular key, even though it does look like it has multi-touch gestures. Let's say this is a test to see how it works. So you can see it just skips every now and again, and it's not as fast. And I can tell, having used all these devices, take my word for it, it's not as fast as some of the even other HTC devices. So I'm kind of curious as to what's going on with the keyboard, but you can use it in portrait, and obviously you can use it in landscape as well if you, for whatever reason, don't want to use the physical QWERTY keyboard. Now this is a 3.8-inch display. Some may say it's a little bit too small. I haven't had a problem with the display. It seems to be a pretty decent size. I think 4 inches is the sweet spot, but 3.8 is certainly not bad, and it's obviously not as small as a display like the 3.5-inch display you see on the Apple iPhone 4. But anyway, HTC Sense, like I said, 1.5, you do get some customization options, and one thing I've always liked about Sense is how well worked out it is, or how well, it's gone through several different revisions, and even though this is an earlier build, there's still a lot to like about HTC Sense in comparison to TouchWiz or Moto Blur or any of those. So you can see, for example, just beautiful widgets. You have this nice widget, and it says it's raining outside, but I'm looking out the window and it's not raining, so who knows what's going on. But you can see a beautiful weather widget. They've just done a really good job with the overlay, whereas I feel like some of them are kind of half-baked and quickly put together, like LG's interface on the Revolution, that little custom UI they're doing. This one's really well put together, so you can see all these different widgets that you get. You get little toggles for your Wi-Fi, your GPS, Bluetooth, and airplane mode. And then let's go back out of that so I can show you some of the different ones. Little messaging widget, for example. I can go straight into a message and type a new one. They just look good. They're really aesthetically pleasing. HTC, mail application, for example, where you can see who it's from and a preview of the message, and then the ability to jump right in if you so desire. So a lot of neat widgets, and just to give you a quick run through of those, and right here you can see that it's obviously not running, it's not running a newer version of Sense. This is what the newer version looks like. So you can just see a comparison to Sense 2.0 or later as opposed to 1.5. So you are getting a device, unfortunately, with a Sense build that's a little bit outdated. That said, there's still a lot to like in it. So we can go down through here, and you see that in a lot of situations you'll have HTC Calendar and Android Calendar, for example. You'll have an Android equivalent and then an HTC version. And I'll tell you, the HTC ones are fantastic. You get not only 1 or 2 options, but in some occasions you get 4, 5, 6 different widget options within a widget, if that makes sense. So for example, when I clicked on HTC's calendar widget, it brought this up, and I had the option to choose between a monthly widget, an agenda widget, or a preview widget. So if I just want to see what's coming up for the next day, I'd hit that, and bam, it pops up right on my home screen. So just very aesthetically pleasing, well-rounded icons. It reminds me a lot, and I know Android users probably hate when I make this comparison, but just the way the icons look and how clean they are. Wait for that to focus in a little bit so we can see what they look like. The icons remind me a lot of Apple icons, just because even when zoomed in pretty higher, where they're big, they look good. You know, there's no pixelation. The actual widgets, or the actual icons, look pretty good. So you can see up here, I'm not in US cellular coverage area, so I'm roaming right now, but you can see a bunch of different options here. You don't get the typical shortcuts that you see in later builds of Sense. And again, not to compare it too much, but just to show you what different builds of Sense look like on some of the newer version, and in the newer versions 2 and up, as opposed to 1.5. So a few differences there, but otherwise, definitely a functional build of HTC Sense.